This is Jordan Tower with JT News. Make sure you smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. Okay. In this video, we're going to get into why Jim Jones is the most disloyal Dipset member that ever lived. Okay. We've gone over this before, but every couple years, you got to remind people of who Jim Jones really is. A disloyal punk. Okay. We got, this is why 50 Cent doesn't respect Jim Jones, was always going after him because he took the bait. He took the bait. He was testing Jim Jones' loyalty back in 06, 07. Okay. This is when Jim Jones turned his back on Camron, the guy who put him on. Yes, they all came up together. But Camron, you don't turn your back on your team. Jim Jones was feeling himself around this time because Bone had come out. He had a couple good songs out, and he was an artist now. He had arrived. Him and Jewels were really tight. Camron was kind of doing his own thing, but it was still Dipset, right? And people drift apart. I'll never forget it. They were at the Emotionless video in Harlem filming. It was Jewels and Jim Jones and Freaky Zeke, and they were up there filming at a church in Harlem. Meanwhile, 50 Cent's on the air, and he's just talking about artists that are going to Koch. Prodigy was over at Koch, but he was also down with G-Unit. But Jim Jones was at Koch, right? And so was the Diplomats albums. So he was kind of saying, Koch is a graveyard for artists. Real artists are on, how 50 boastfully talks. Camron called in the radio and argued with 50 Cent on the air. And, that turned into a beef between Camron and 50 Cent. We don't have to get totally into that. Camron claims he was paid $100,000 by the head of Koch to defend Koch. And he did it. And this was a sparring match between 50 and Camron. The heads of two crews, Dipset and 50, Dipset and G-Unit. There was also D-Block. Those were the main crews running New York. Okay? You had Rockefeller, but it was kind of like it wasn't unified like these crews were. Anyways, I remember Jim Jones and Jewels congregating. They don't want to go along with... This is a time where 50 Cent was ruining people's careers and making it difficult. Jim Jones didn't want to stop the parade of Ballin' and Emotionless and the albums he's dropping at Koch. So he decides to not go with Camron. He decides to make the call to 50 Cent and say, hey, man, I ain't rocking with Cam on this one. So Camron drops his 50 Cent diss within a week. 50 Cent drops a Camron diss, and on that diss, he says, I'm demoting Camron and bringing Jim Jones up as the head of Dipset. Ballin'. Well, Jim Jones took the bait because you saw him shortly after that on Rap City with 50 Cent hosting. And they made he made a clear decision to turn his back on Camron, and things were never the same after that. Till this day. It's a rough relationship. Camron can never forget that. You turned your back on me, man, during a time where you were supposed to be unified. You're supposed to be my brother, but you went sided with the enemy like a snake. Jewels kind of just went along with Jim. Was put on by Camron and Jim, so I can't really fault Jewels. But Jim Jones was a snake. He knew better. So, things shook out. Camron and Jim Jones had a strained relationship for years. Jewels did too, because, his album was being held up at Def Jam because of the beef between Camron and Jay-Z. Jay-Z was the head of Def Jam at that time. And he was shelved. They took some shots at each other, Jewels and Camron on MTV. Those interviews, they were talking, he was talking about, I can't mess with Jewels because he's on syrup. Jewels responded, I don't know who he's talking about, but he was on syrup. Lil Wayne introduced him to syrup and he was gonzo, okay? He admitted he had a problem. He's better now, okay? And, later in the years, we'll see that Camron gets cool with 50 Cent after 8 years later. They're cool again. It was a fun time. Jim Jones goes on the radio after he signs to Rock Nation. Another snake move. Camron wasn't 100% back with cool with Jay-Z at that point. Signed to Rock Nation. Did this big interview with Flex saying Camron wasn't always there for me. Crying. Tears falling. Camron did his own response. Said, I'm happy for Jim, but Jim tells a lot of stories. He's got things messed up and he's in his emotions. He's got to calm down. And after that, 50 Cent would torment Jim Jones. That he was involved with, he was on wiretaps talking about Tekashi, all this other stuff, and how he never got pulled in. It didn't make sense, and all this other stuff. But what that boils down to, 50 Cent tormenting Jim Jones, is he didn't respect him because he doesn't respect people that don't stay unified. He doesn't respect snakes. And shortly after that, Dipset came back together and did like a couple songs, couple videos, but it fell apart again, And Camron's on show with Mace, Jim Jones is doing his thing, Juelz is doing his thing. They link up once in a while if it's like a commercial or something, but it's not the same. It's definitely not the same. It's all strained. Once you start turning your back on each other and everything, and money comes into play, people, Juelz went to jail. There's so much happened. But in the core of everything, they're still brothers, but it's just not the same. And Jim Jones, there's a lot of funny stuff about Jimmy. But we'll get to that another time. This is Jordan Tower with JT News. I'll check you guys later.